Now, yesterday, Senator Bernie Sanders put forward a bill to help make prescription drugs a little bit more affordable. How? Well, by setting up a fund that would basically facilitate the import of cheaper generic drugs from Canada. That's actually something that, surprisingly, the government's not actually allowed to do. We're not allowed to import drugs, cheaper drugs from Canada. We have to buy from the more expensive market here in the United States. Now, the bill itself was revenue neutral and actually picked up a lot of Republican support. Still, however, it did not pass. There was not enough support to pass, thanks in part by 13 corporate Democrats who just happen to have ties to the pharmaceutical industry. Surprise! Democrats, of course, like New Jersey Senator and possible 2020 contender Cory Booker. Oh, this guy. Now look, Cory Booker, he recently made the news by calling out Jeff Sessions. That was actually kind of cool, but it was actually also grandstanding. And anybody who looked at that, who watched that whole session, was like, yeah, dude, you were grandstanding. You were setting yourself up for a 2020 run. And yes, it was cool to oppose Sessions, but also the way that you do it, I mean, calling it unprecedented and making so much of a big deal afterwards? No, it screams attention whore. That's what it does. But that's what Cory Booker is doing. He's being an attention whore so he can set himself up for 2020. It's kind of sad. It's a little pathetic. Now, Sessions, of course, is a pretty terrible guy. So doing that, look, you do that, you're going to get a lot of praise. Why? Because you're going after somebody who's pretty much scum of the earth at this point. And so he got a lot of praise. He went in front of the camera and essentially preened about, again, his unprecedented challenge of Jeff Sessions, who was likely going to pass, so it doesn't really mean a whole lot. Anyway, now he did this in order to make the case that he's going to be tough on Republicans and going to end up being the friend of minorities in the working class. However, this vote that he took, that's not exactly friendly to the working class or pretty much anyone except for the pharmaceutical industry. Now here's, again, I got to stress this was a bipartisan vote. A bunch of Republicans voted for it and also some very establishment Democrats. In fact, the bill was co-sponsored by Amy Klobuchar. Okay. Now, I want to point out some of the Democrats who voted for this. And it's, by the way, it's not a comprehensive list of all the Democrats that voted for it, but it's some of the more establishment Democrats. You had Kirsten Gillibrand, Dick Durbin, Kamala Harris, Tim Kaine. Tim Kaine voted for this in favor. Wow. But not only that, that's not the most surprising Democrat. You also had Claire freaking McCaskill. Remember Claire McCaskill during the whole primary? Now, Bernie Sanders, he's a socialist. He's a socialist. That's what Claire McCaskill would go up on Morning Joe and talk about. Yeah. One of the biggest Hillary Clinton supporters and one of the biggest establishment Democrats ended up voting in favor with Bernie Sanders for cheaper drugs. Claire McCaskill. You know who else is a big surprise? Chuck Schumer voted in favor of this with Bernie Sanders to get cheaper drugs. Not only that, but you had Joe Manchin. Joe Manchin, this is a guy that I frequently shit on the show all the time. Joe Manchin voted in favor of this. Joe Manchin, by the way, later on, I'm going to show you how much money Cory Booker and Joe Manchin got from the pharmaceutical industry, and Joe Manchin still voted in favor of this. That's amazing. That's amazing. And then, of course, another Democrat who's very blue dog, very establishment, is Bill Nelson. Bill Nelson. Again, a lot of those are big money establishment Democrats that still voted for this, but not freaking Cory Booker. Now, even more amazing, again, bipartisan, I'm going to list off some of the Republicans that voted in favor of this alongside of Bernie Sanders. All right. You have Mike Lee of Utah, very conservative guy. You had Libertarian Rand Paul, Libertarian free market Rand Paul is out there saying, yeah, dude, this makes sense. Let's make it so that we can actually trade drugs or import drugs from Canada that are actually cheaper. Yeah, that makes sense, dude. That makes sense. Yeah, Chuck Grassley, very conservative. Suzanne Collins of Maine. You also had Arizona Republican John McCain voting in favor of this. And here's probably the most surprising Republican on this list to vote for this piece of legislation, Ted Cruz. Ted fucking Cruz. That guy. The guy who ate, I don't know what he ate. All right, when he was on the stage. But it was nasty. Ted Cruz voted for this with Bernie Sanders. But Cory Booker couldn't? Cory Booker? And look, do you know why these people voted for this? Because it's not a partisan issue. It actually makes sense. It makes sense. Yes, let the American people actually import their drugs from Canada, someplace that's actually sells them for cheaper. That makes sense. That makes sense. The most common sense thing in the world. But these 13 corporate Democrats, they couldn't even join up with Ted Cruz. They couldn't. And look, yeah, I know the thought of joining with Ted Cruz on anything is super revolting. But look at what they could have done. They could have saved you guys hundreds of dollars on your prescription drugs. They could have. This could have won. This could have passed. And besides, it didn't add a penny to the debt. I mentioned the top of the segment. This whole thing was revenue neutral. You think Ted Cruz would have voted for it if it weren't revenue neutral? No. No. But here you had Ted Cruz voting in favor of a Bernie Sanders bill. That in itself is amazing. But you know why the Democrats like Cory Booker didn't vote for this? It's because they're purchased by big pharmaceutical companies. I've actually got an image here of how much money was given from the pharmaceutical industry to the people who voted against this bill. Let's take a look at that. It's right here. Oh, look. Cory Booker received $267,338 from the pharmaceutical industry. And if you look down there, Joe Manchin, who voted in favor of this, by the way, received $230,000 from the pharmaceutical industry. And of course, Mitch McConnell, giant whore, taking all that money, whoring almost as much as Orrin Hatch. Orrin. So, look, that's the money. I mean, you have to follow the money, okay? You have to follow the money. If you're ever wondering why they voted against something that would hurt those companies' bottom line, well, it doesn't take a genius to figure that one out. Again, follow the money. And Booker is one of the guys that the Democratic Party establishment wants to put up as a presidential pick for 2020. This is a guy who thinks he's a warrior for righteousness by taking on Jeff Sessions. No, Cory. You like the camera. That's what you like. You're a warrior for the camera. Okay? That's the only time that you'll look tough. And other than that, other than just loving the camera, you love big Wall Street money, and you love the establishment. No, this guy is no progressive warrior. None at all. He's a corporatist. And if he tries to sell himself as anything other than a corporatist, don't believe it, because it's a lie. Hey everybody, thanks for watching this video. If you want to see more like this, please hit the subscribe button below. And if you want to support truly independent, non-corporate media, go to our Patreon page and become a patron. Patreon.com/TYTNation.